So today, rather the one, that I'm going to watch after Let's Talk, since the last episode was actually less than 24 hours ago. But anyway, yeah, going back to South Korea now for some reason. Not that I intended to go back, just you know, I happened to go back. Uh, but this time going a letter prior to D, I suppose, where I got the previous two titles. This one's called Cello, or Cello, really. No, I just realized. I mean, it is pronounced Cello, I suppose, but under normal circumstances, Cello would be spelled CH. Somehow, people say Cello, and it's really spelled Cello. It really is. Anyway, yeah, so this is from. Not sure. I'll check the date later, I suppose. Um, yeah. So obviously, since it's South Korean, I'm thinking of that friend now. We'll see if it's any similar. I suppose there's a cello there instead. The only other time I ever um, the cello was ever a topic was in Evangelion. Right? He has some cello lessons, and then they play Beethoven's, I think, on a cello. Other than that, yeah, I don't exactly watch many things that have a cello in them. Anyway, yeah, I'm not entirely sure how a cello can be used as some sort of horror trope, but somehow they did this. By the way, why is that company called Tube Entertainment when there's no tubes? Why isn't it called Water Entertainment? If they thought, that they only they only get water. I mean, it makes no sense. Makes little sense at least. But anyway, maybe they'll get a tube and yeah, just filter out all the water or something. I don't know. So about the intro, there's quite a bit of blood, but the juxtaposition with Ave Maria was so powerful. Yeah, that seems like a very appropriate usage of Ave Maria, because it's about sadness essentially. I suppose yeah, one could see from the music itself, and yeah, there's also an elegance in it. So when juxtaposed with what's really chaotic gore, essentially, a result from the vicissitudes of life and the world, then it creates a certain atmosphere that really sort of goes beyond the room where the music is normally played. So for a while I thought that she was hallucinating there being anyone in the house, because up to that point it seems like there might be some mental issues possibly, since a piece of music was able to, although I suppose it makes sense if say it's implied, nothing is made explicit, but presumably a piece of music belongs to the person from the previous encounter, so I suppose it makes sense in this. But then there was a bit of I'm assuming it was CGI and with regards to her hand, and So I thought that might be indicative of some uh, an overactive imagination at the very least. By the way, what is the point of a curved bath? I mean, it's not comfortable to stretch out in a curved bath, is it? Unless somehow, I mean, unless it's very curved, I guess. Maybe it won't be very curved, but this one here is a bit curved, and you know, I see the whole point in a bath being curved. Anyway. But by the way, what I think also it tried to do, what it did effectively do, at least when it comes to my perception of what happened at one point when she was driving, is to play with the expectation of what happened at the very beginning. So one expects the story leading up to that, and so as soon as it nearly happens, then one would be almost convinced that there is that no alternative. Of course, there can always be an alternative, and I suppose it can always come later, since it seemed to happen, unless, of course, the person from the beginning isn't the same person. Also, it's kind of interesting how when that cleaner person, or whoever she is, maybe a babysitter, looked at the portrait and it distorted, and so did the sound. I guess that's sort of like a premonition of something. Obviously, a negative premonition as such. This this sound seems inherently negative somehow. I mean, the sounds can be associated with subjective states, but that seem to be negative for me, and distortions are usually anyway. And damn, I suspected something could possibly happen to the dog, and I hate when that happens. Why do they do that? Humans can play by themselves all they want. Why do they involve anyone else at all? What's the point? And, so detestable. By the way, the child script was obviously written by an adult, right? Although, yeah, you don't see many children acting sort of like one of the children, at least, the other one is mute, so it doesn't really act at all. But yeah, the other one, yeah, didn't act. Usually children act wooden. Um, but what's wooden? The logic of walking in the middle of a parking area. I mean, no matter what, wherever there's cars, one does not walk in the middle. Just what's the point, right? And then she stayed on the floor. Really? I mean, what? They need to do something other than that. By the way, so I noticed that there is at least one word that's seemingly identical in both Japanese and Korean. Haven't really noticed any other words there were, but yeah, the word for sister, seemingly, yeah, really. Incidentally, it also sounds like the mythological Japanese ogre. Yeah, somehow it really does. And yeah, everyone's having a breakdown. One thing I noticed is two posters and I didn't quite notice the posters themselves, as in, they're barely noticeable as to what content they hold. But the names on them I recognized because I've once watched it before. It's not quite a remarkable film, it just has a unique name. Um, Arch and CC Park or something. Yeah, I'm assuming the posters are there because it is a South Korean animation movie as well. So there's just a couple of posters for them. I don't think the characters there might have a breakdown in a different sort of way, not quite a melancholic way, but well, it's been years since I've seen it anyway, so I'm not sure I quite remember. I just remember it was crude. Anyway, yeah, so there we go. The problem with this is that I'm not entirely sure what she's having a breakdown over. She keeps mentioning Hyun Woo, someone. Assuming some sort of breakup, but it's not made obvious before. It really isn't, unless I missed something. And of course, they all have different problems. But this one in particular, this she was most optimistic of the bunch before, and suddenly she's having a worse breakdown than any of the others. Oh, and on a closer viewing, this poster says there's funky. Now, yeah, I'm assuming they use that word quite appropriately, I suppose. By the way, so this movie makes it seem like the person from the beginning wants to enact some sort of vengeance, and some incidents may be due to her, but it doesn't seem like all of them would be. Certainly, certainly, there's quite a few that are due to the imagination. It seems, but not just that. Uh, what's strange is that there seems to be some sort of collective hallucination. I mean, there is this imagery that's displayed at times, and it seems to have been seen by at least a couple of different people. Yeah, it's the same image. I'm not sure if they knew that they saw them, because somehow it doesn't seem like anyone communicates at all what's happening. Like this person that never did not tell anyone, as far as I know, about the incident from the beginning, or the fact that other things followed it up, and then she's seemingly hallucinating, which I assume has to do with her fear after the incident from the beginning. But then there's also the pills she keeps taking, which one must wonder about. Suppose if they're some sort of stimulant, they might induce hallucinations, but it's strange. I like though how they depicted a particular hallucination at one point that reimagined how darkness looks like, as in the darkness of one's imagination or such, and it was a literal darkness, like a cloud of darkness, but quite a small cloud, and it disappeared as soon as she opened her eyes, which indicates that it must have been some sort of hypnagogic imagery, since that sort of thing happens when one is asleep, and similar to sleep paralysis or such, and sleepwalking, but that's with regards to movement, not hallucination as such. Um, but yeah, there's obviously connected to dreams, but just state in between sleep and wakeful state. Uh, yeah, interesting. So I guess it's all about fear, but also the translation of what this vengeance might look like. Those pills might also be something to do with headaches, too, because she clutches her head every so often as well. Uh, Also, I like the fluty music that sometimes plays. It's quite minimalistic. It's a nice contrast, I guess, with the grandiosity of something like Ave Maria and such. At one point, someone mentions a Mao joke with a baby. Uh, uh, I've heard more likely many babies in the like a few past films, not really many, a few maybe, annoying sounds that they make and such, but not in this one. So I don't know what she's referring to. Yeah, like she couldn't be referring to her mute child, right? I mean, she's not a baby, she's like 10 or something. So I'm not really sure. I also hate how they did that thing with the bird. It's one of those revolving things. By the way, how do they? I don't suppose South Koreans like to understand German, are they? So how exactly do they navigate their car? Can't believe that the car's interface wouldn't have a local translation. I'm assuming it does, but somehow in this film it seems like they don't and can somehow navigate it as well. Suppose she could always have learned German in between her student fights and familial breakdowns. And yeah, based on a seeming hallucination when she's driving. You know, if I was a psychologist consulting her, I'd recommend not driving at all. You know, that's quite a hallucination. You know, I mean that's yeah, quite. By the way, besides the familiar breakdowns mentioned earlier, I actually do like the wallpaper. Somehow, I don't think I've ever seen wallpaper on the ceiling. That's quite an all-enveloping wallpaper. I'm not sure what those things are. They seem to be varied, but yeah, it's interesting. Suppose they could add to the texture of the hallucination, you know. Well, I guess if you're hallucinating, you may as well just include all of them as well. And there's quite a few, maybe you can imagine them as elves or something, maybe elves or are just killing each other or something, I don't know. Yeah, also, how did she go from the child? How did the child go from playing the cello really badly, right? Like a really horrid drone, and somehow keeps playing it. I mean, if I played it horribly, I just stop, or at least try bit by bit because it's just too horrible, So how did she go from that to playing it well later on when she has the tape? I don't know, or maybe it was the tape that was really um, loud or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, somehow she's suddenly improved. Also, the carpet seems to have some sort of small holes. It's very strange. I'm not sure if they're actually holes or it's a design or something. Could be either. But they do seem like small holes. So this is quite amazing. She's never told her own husband anything, even though she's actually hallucinating out of presumably all the fear, and yet somehow he just finds out through the most strange circumstances. So far it's proving to be sort of like an average horror film sort of type thing, which relies a bit on scares and just a slight bit on gore, for not for unnecessary reasons, I suppose you could say, like the film others and such. But when such a musical instrument is the key uh, prop, I guess you could say, when a cello is at the center of all these affairs, it's literally the title. Uh, yeah, it sort of elevates it a bit, doesn't it? Of course, ultimately, it still depends on whether the narrative itself is interesting, whether how the movie turns out, uh, you know, and but the fact that it's there, you know, and obviously there's music in the background that's played with it, makes it nice in a way. Guess it would be the same if it was a piano or such, you know. By the way, I like the wall sculpture at the 55th minute mark. That's quite interesting. I do happen to like all the. I'm assuming it is CGI. It doesn't seem overly done. There's not too much of it either, and the way it's done, yeah, it seems to depict these hallucinations even better. Now, the video hallucinations, or fictionally in universe, of course, they are. I don't know. Maybe the house is really cursed within this fictional context. Uh, but yeah, well, in reality, they'd be hallucinations. Although the fact that even uh, the happy-go-lucky child could do that. I mean, I guess collective hallucinations can happen, but they're kind of rare in a way. There's usually a reason for them, like historically, the reason was ergot or such, but other than that, it's kind of rare. Certainly, they're certainly not usually precipitated by someone who wants to enact vengeance and only one person knows about it anyway, so I'm not sure exactly. So yeah, I don't suppose that's the reason. And yeah, they're really taking on everyone and everything. It's incredible. It's like here I'm try to see whether there's anyone who's really doing all this, but they couldn't make any one person couldn't create collective hallucinations, right? So that's strange. What's also strange is telling the housekeeper to stay deadly silent, as if she's ever said a word before. But this is truly a demented film. What I don't get is why it was her husband's phone number. And yeah, I think I get it. Hallucinations are from a different source, really, not from a present source. This film is certainly more gory than Dead Friend, which is funny considering, it has Dead in the title, and this has Cello in the title. You wouldn't normally associate, blood with cellos, would you? By the way, it's something for her to tell Yunjin to calm down when she is in an incredible state. It's quite something also that two doctors at least in the middle of the film and the end where um, they conclude by trying to reassure the other person that they have nothing to worry about when in fact all hell will break loose. By the way, I wonder what that thing at the end is with the vapor. It seems like some sort of kettle, but the kettle doesn't spout vapor in such a direction, and there's too much vapor for kettle as well. It's really strange. By the way, are you happy? You should be. I am wondering, kind of, partially, whether the thing that measures beats per second, whatever it's called currently, whether that changes her brainwaves. Because earlier they said that she has two types of brainwaves. They didn't expand on that, but that's what they said. So yeah, finished. I liked how it has this cyclic element to it. This thing, although at the end, well, just before the end, the 10 minutes before the very end, it was quite bloody and gory. But it still made a slight bit of sense in a way. I don't know. It played a bit with psychology, I suppose, but not really. Did go a long way, but so in a way, yeah. But yeah, they really, as mentioned earlier, they really to just absolutely dealt with absolutely everyone and everything and everyone. But it was interesting otherwise, quite more bloody than Dead Friend, as mentioned, but otherwise it sort of makes a slight bit more sense. I mean, there's no bullying involved like in Dead Friend, but there's well, jealousy, I suppose you could say. One thing that they missed is the student from the beginning. That seemed to be a minor thing. I'm not sure why they included it so much. It seemed to be more of a distraction. I suppose that's the primary reason why they included it. But it served as an unnecessary distraction, I think, because I was thinking most of the film that it was due to her, but not really. It was more of a hallucination thing, and it's kind of a distraction, I suppose. Just like her mother said, it was sort of minor, whatever they did. And I suppose it would be better if they just didn't include it at all. I suppose, I don't know. It was interesting though. It was, wasn't it? Yeah, I suppose it was. But it was very gory, still very, very gory, even more than Psycho, I think.